Good morning, everybody. Oh, looks like I started a little early today. Well, I'll just stretch for time. Good morning, everybody. This is Martin John, and we are talking about the Tao Te Ching. The Tao Te Ching is an ancient text written about 600 BCE and consists of 81 short verses, which all provide some super powerful guidance on how to live a more reasonable life. How to live in more harmony with nature and the world around us. And it uses a lot of poetic language. It uses a lot of sort of riddles. It uses a lot of the text in it allows us to try and decipher it for ourselves. Gives us a lot of freedom to be able to understand it from our perspective. Because if you're arriving at some text from a certain perspective and it was written from another perspective, well, it doesn't necessarily work well for you. If it says, hey, eat healthy, right? Eat healthy is a great thing, but what is healthy? Well, then we spend hundreds of years trying to define what healthy is. In 1 week, an egg is healthy. The next week, an egg is not healthy. And then and then we are supposed to say, it's healthy to eat this, and it's not. This is why it's really great to be able to approach life and trust yourself, because you know yourself better than anybody. You know what's healthy for you if you pay attention, right? So if you were to pay attention to what happens when you eat something, because eating something is interesting. You spend, let's say up to 3 to 5 seconds in your mouth, and then the next 48 hours it's in your body doing things, either giving you energy or taking your energy or helping you feel inflamed or whatever, right? Like this food that you're eating is with you for a couple days, or 18 hours or whatever, however long it's going to be in your system and affecting you chemically, right? So often we focus on those 3 to 5 seconds that it's in our mouth. But if we only focus on what's in our mouth, then it could be affecting us after we eat it and we're not aware of it. And this happens in our lives a lot when we're focused on what we see, right? We see something in the world and we experience something in the world, and we focus on that which we experience, not all of the results from that, like the outcomes of the actions that we take because of what we witnessed. And I think it's important to be able to look at the big picture of things, like when we eat, the time it's in our mouth is so short compared to the amount, and that affects us in a very conspicuous way, while what effects it has in our body is very subtle and happens over time. And if we're not aware of, like the Snicker bar ads, when you eat a Snicker bar, you are immediately changed in some way. But what are the changes that are happening over the next 20 hours? What happens to your emotional stability? What happens to, you might be being, like in those ads where oh, you're a bitch, and then you can calm down, right? And the times that you're a bitch, is that because you're going through withdrawal from the sugar that you normally eat, and then you need the Snicker bar? Or is it actually because you're really hungry? Most people in the United States haven't understood what hunger really is. They just experience withdrawal from having eaten sugars and carbs and other things like that. So, but are we aware of the difference? And that's the thing. There's so many subtle things going on in life, and we dismiss those things for the conspicuous. And when we read the Tao Te Ching, what we're doing is trying to point towards the subtle, trying to maneuver our attention towards the subtle and get away from those 5 seconds that the food is in our mouth and look at the 18 to 24 hours that it's in our body. What's the difference? If we focus on food and the short period of time that it's in our mouth, that conspicuous moment, versus the time that it is affecting our body, affecting our lives, affecting the way we think, there's a big difference there. When you do meditations and you do like body scan meditations, it's interesting to be like, I'm realizing that I don't, without moving my toes, I can't really focus on them. Like once I move them, I can, there they are, But when we do a body scan, it's interesting, sometimes you can't feel a part of your body. You can't sense it without it having some sensation. And so that's another, there's subtlety there that we're not attuned to. And I think that, from birth, we are allowed to tune out from the subtle and really focus on the conspicuous. And that's becoming more and more the case as we have phones that we're giving children so that they can focus on the conspicuous. Focus on what's in front of you. Focus on what you're looking at. Don't be still. Don't be quiet. There's no reason to be quiet. I remember when I was a kid, I used to turn off the lights and sit in the dark. And my mom would come home and actually get mad because she wouldn't know what the hell was going on. She's like, "Why don't you turn the TV on?" she would say. And I'm like, as a child, I was just like, I just like the quiet. It's still, it's quiet. There was something, I was being naturally drawn towards the stillness. And yet my mom, who probably had no ability to be still at that time, she felt uncomfortable about it, right? And that happens. We can feel uncomfortable about things like that. We can feel like it's not okay to embrace the subtle, because the subtle is hard to see. It's hard to embrace. Like if you were to sit there and eat food today and try and figure out what it's doing in your body for the first time, you would not know at all, because you don't even have a baseline of awareness of what your body is doing, because you're only focused on, because possibly you're only focused on the conspicuous. And the conspicuous is, I'm hungry, eat. And eat anything. Eat anything that I can. Eat anything I can get my hands on, because I'm hungry. But that's really not, once again, that's looking at the conspicuous. Because are you hungry? Because I know if I eat late at night, if I eat at 10 o'clock at night, and because I'm up, usually I'm in bed by then. And if I'm up, I'll start to get hungry. I'll start to feel hungry, whether or not I'm actually getting hungry. I think it's just because I'm up late and I'm, my body just wants to rest. But because I'm up and maybe I can't sleep or whatever, I start to feel like, I need to eat. And so I eat a little snack. Well, at 6 o'clock the next morning when I get up, I'm going to feel hungry. And as I feel hungry, what's going to end up happening to me is that I'm going to eat in the morning. Well, that's the conspicuousness. When I focus on who I am, and when I focus on what I'm doing, and when I focus on the subtle, I recognize pretty quickly that it is not that I'm hungry. It's that my body was digesting the food from last night, and I'm not really hungry. And I know that because I know what my body needs to keep itself running. And it doesn't need to eat at 10 o'clock at night and then again at 6 o'clock in the morning. And especially if I cheat on my diet. When I say cheat on my diet, I want you guys to understand that my diet is very specific and related to my MS. And it's not about losing weight. It's not about anything like that. I don't have, like when I say my diet, it's just that which I eat. And it is very restricted, just due to a medical condition that I have, right? So, and that's not a doctor's giving me that diet. That's me, figuring that out over time, right? Figuring out what's good for my body, figuring out, what's good for me personally. And I wouldn't want anybody to have my diet. My diet isn't easy. I cannot eat at a restaurant almost at all. So it's much easier to be able to do those things in our world. Now, I'm happy to cook 98% of my meals. But again, it's about the subtle. It's about me recognizing that what's in my mouth is only going to be there for a short period of time, but what's in my body is going to be there for hours, if not days. I don't know how long food takes to digest completely. And don't forget that just because it's gone through your waste, that the chemicals or the effects and the minerals and things that are in the food aren't continuing to affect you. So, long-term subtle results versus, short-term sort of conspicuous results. I was talking to someone yesterday about, my dark retreat. I went on a retreat where I 6 days, 7 nights in complete darkness. And when I did that, it was about the subtle. It was about like when you can't see, right? Like your body is burning so many calories just seeing. Your body is expressing itself around its environment because it sees its environment so much. It's so obvious, the environment that you're in, right? You're looking all the time. You're seeing all the time. Now, of course, if you're blind or if you've experienced something where your sight was hindered for a time, that's one thing. But I was telling them about that. I was telling someone about that yesterday, and he asked about it being torture. And that's the thing. When you're forced to step away from the conspicuous, it could very much feel torturous. And that's because we can't focus. Karen, how are you? Karen, are you with me? So sometimes, because people are new to Noom Vibe or what have you, they join on accident. Maybe they wanted to follow me, maybe they wanted to do something, but sometimes they come up on stage. And sometimes it's the first time they've come up on stage and they don't know how to access their microphone. And I'm not exactly sure. Sometimes it's permissions and other things like that. So what I like to do is just give my guest a minute, and then I will take you off stage, just in case you want to be off stage. But I'll give you a minute to sort of sort some of that out. Maybe you didn't allow the mic or whatever to be in there. But either way, I'm going to go ahead and remove you, Karen. Thank you for joining me. I hope you have a great day. If you did want to come up and try again, of course, just come on back up and we'll try and sort that out together. So what I was talking about is the idea of when you're forced to focus on the subtle and you don't know anything about the subtle, you don't know anything about focusing on the subtle, it could be torture. Because he asked me, it was like, was that like torture? And I was like, well, it probably would have been for you, but I elected to have that experience, right? I elected to have the experience of darkness. Now, remember, when I was a kid, I told this story already today. When I was a kid, I used to sit in the room and turn off the lights and just be in the dark. The darkness is a beautiful place. And I remember there was a room in one of my, This is when I was a little older, when I was a teenager, just as I was starting to use drugs and drink and things. There was a room in my house that didn't get any light. It just was complete blackness, and I could not see my hand in front of my face. And that's where I spent time, like when I wanted to be quiet. And there's a stillness, there's a subtlety of the moment you say, I want to be quiet. There's a moment that happens. There's a moment that there's like, oh, I want quiet. And when we can surrender to that quiet, when we can surrender to that moment, it just kind of frees us up, right? It just like opens us just a little bit. It opens us to receive a little bit more. You know, it's funny. I mean, I experience this a lot. Like, since I have focused on the subtle, since I have learned to and trained myself to focus on the subtle, I recognize, oh, you know what? I'm eating more than I wanted. I'm not feeling comfortable in my body. And then I'll go through a fast. And I think Penny was telling me the other day that she was going through a fast. And it's great. And it's not about there being an outcome to the fast. It's just like right now I'm feeling too full, so I'm going to fast. And I might not even tick a time frame for that fast. Now, I fast every day for 16 to 18 hours. And sometimes within like the 8 hours, the 6 hours that I eat, right, which is like usually between 9 and 3 or 9 and 5. Usually when I eat too much, when I eat a little more, then it really throws off the comfort level of my body. Is this normal for everybody? Probably not. This is for me, right? My personality, the way I am, I don't want to eat all day. Like when I do eat all day, I feel so heavy. And I don't mean fat, and I don't mean bloated. I mean, my body just feels heavy to carry around. It just feels heavy and dense. But there's a lightness to me that I like to have. And that's so subtle. You know, I remember when I smoked, I'd wake up every day with this film on my body. But I wasn't aware of the film on my body until I stopped smoking. And then I was aware of the film on my body. And then when I started smoking again, I was aware of the film. Until I smoked enough that I wasn't aware of the film anymore. And that's the difference between subtlety and conspicuousness, right? It's conspicuous that you have a film on your body after the first time you smoke, and you wake up the next day and you're like, oh God, that's horrible. And then within 3 hours, you're having another cigarette because of course you are, you know? But that's what happens with food, and that's what happens with drugs, and that's what happens with anger, and that's what happens with the internet. And, you know, like there's not a physical layer of film on our body when we're addicted to social media. But the moment we wake up and we're checking social media, that's that film. That's that, I just need a little hair of the dog, you know, and that's what we do. And that's conspicuous. There is a desire to step away from that, right? There is a desire to kind of engage in the subtle. Like, we're engaging social media because we're feeling uncomfortable. We're engaging drugs because we're feeling uncomfortable. We're engaging because we don't like our lives in this state. There's lots of reasons why we do it, but what we're doing is we're trying to get to another state, and we're trying to make that as conspicuous as possible because I want a big change, you know. And sometimes these things happen subtly, you know, slowly over time. And when we embrace, you know, the subtle, when we can embrace the subtlety of things, you know, when we can, this is what the Tao talks about when it talks about being in the dark. In the dark, things are subtle. Like you might hear something, but If you want to not be afraid, you can't tell a story about it. You just have to be still within it and allow it. Because you're not going to see it. You're not going to know it. You just be still. I'm going to go ahead and pick a random number from the random number generator. If anybody wants to join me to pick a number, I'd love to have you with me. Today we pick number 20, Stop Learning. And, oh, Melissa's with us. Wonderful. Hey, Melissa, how are you?
I'm blessed, Martin. John, how are you?
I'm doing very well. How are your classes going?
It's been interesting. I've been covering for another teacher for the last couple of days who hasn't been here, and I've enjoyed getting to know a couple of students. You know, there's some challenging behaviors, but that's part of the territory, and you know, I don't usually let it stay rent free in my mind, so to speak, because, you know, that's just what I do. You know, I deal with the kiddos. And I told the one little girl yesterday that was giving me a hard time, I'm like, you know what, honey? There is nothing that you can do that's going to make me stop loving you. And she did not know what to say to that, Martin John. She just looked at me like I had lost my mind.
That's so good. That's so good. You know, like, because who knows what her relationship is to people loving her, and if she's challenging you, like, that's the thing. I do think that we're constantly looking for the wall. We're constantly looking for the barrier, and we want to push it. But, you know, if you were to push up against a tree, it pushes back.
Right.
But if you push up against air, there's no satisfaction in pushing. You know, like, have you ever gone to push a door open and it opened automatically, and you just felt like, oh, I was expecting to be pushed up against, right?
Yes.
And it's like, oh, you know, and that's, I think, what children do. It's like they push, and it's like, I want to find resistance. And even saying that, even say, look, there's nothing you can do, because the thing is the resistance is now in, the ball is in their court. It's kind of like, look, I love you, kid. And, like, you could keep doing this, but you're only hurting yourself because I love you. And you're not receiving that love. And that's not something that you're going to want to continue doing. And that's beautiful. And whether or not that's going to put her in line, who knows? But it's, you know, I really appreciate that you told me that. So that's beautiful.
Well, you know, I don't know if I shared it with you. I shared it with someone the other day. I think that the purpose, you know, the reason God has me on this earth is to love, you know. That's why I'm here. And these kiddos need it, Martin. They need it so much.
I'm telling you. Yeah, they do. And I want to ask about your mom.
Mom is currently making a decision to drive and leave the area where I can help her and to be 2.5 hours away. And I have to, you know, give her the choice. You know, it's her power. I can't take her power away from her. I have to give her the right to be independent. And even though it's very frustrating for me, you know, personally, I have to respect her choice and let her have her power for as long as she can. And, you know, it's been really frustrating, and she's still not feeling great, and the doctors keep, you know, going back and forth and wishy-washiness and blah, blah, it's this, and blah, blah, it's not this. And so it's been frustrating, but, you know, I have to trust God in all of this, and trust that, you know, he's going to work it out the way it's supposed to be. And, you know, I just have to have faith. But
I want you to take that step back and recognize that. Oh, yeah, of course. I do want you to just like be able to recognize. You had said something that I just want to kind of point out, just so that we have awareness of it. You're not actually giving her anything. You're surrendering to her, her choice. Like, it's not like you're giving her independence. Like, she's
No,
independent.
she has
Like,
it. You're right. That's it.
like,
Thank you for helping me with that awareness. That is absolutely true.
right. It's not you giving it to her. It's you letting go of your desire to control.
Yes, that's absolutely
That's the work.
true.
That's the work where, like, I just wanted to kind of point that out. Like, there's a big difference, right? Like, I mean, it's subtle, right? Once again, it's subtle, but it makes a big difference in how we respect the lives of other people.
Well, it was interesting. I was talking to Cece last night, and I was telling her how I had this conversation. And during the conversation, my mother said, "You're making me feel blah, blah, blah." And I didn't say anything to her, but my inner Cece popped in my head and said, "You can't make anybody feel anything." And I was like, wait a second. I can't make her feel anything. So I just had to give myself a little bit of Cece's words, kudos for that awareness. So thank you for helping me develop a different awareness, because you're right. I don't have any control over her life. And, it's just, the concern level and the frustration that I can't help her, that she's 2.5 hours away. But again, like I said, I have to relinquish that. Well, you said I have to relinquish that control and just trust that, I guess like what you were saying with Tao, with everything's being as it should be, right? So I know you were about to pick a number. Do you mind if I pick one?
Not in a nihilistic way, but in a way where it's like you surrender to it. Like,
say that last part again. I think I lost you for a minute.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, of course, pick a number. Yes, that's exactly what I want. Are you still with me?
Yep, I'm right here. How about...
Oh, okay, good.
How about number 14?
14. 14 is entitled Hidden in Plain Sight. And I think this is going to address both like your mom and, how the challenges that you're seeing in your students. So look, and there is nothing to see. Listen, and there is nothing to hear. Reach, and there is nothing to grasp. These three things come together and combine and are one. This is a mystery and cannot be named. It is present within all manifestation and is forever returning to nothing. So subtle it can't be identified. So conspicuous it is never hidden. Consider a time before history to show you how to yield. You cannot know if you're doing it. You cannot prove that you're doing it. But you can still be doing it. You are using it now. But for what? Did anything stand out to you there?
Yeah, I was taking some notes while you were sharing, and it's interesting because I think one of the other numbers that I picked had to do with mysteries. So there seems to be a lot of mystery in my life, Martin. Maybe that's part of the problem. I don't know. Maybe I need to solve the mystery. I don't know. But the word mystery, the returning to nothing stood out to me. And then there was a line, I didn't get all of it, but you were saying to consider a time before history. And then something about yielding.
To show you how to yield. Yeah, show you how to yield. That line is interesting to me. Consider a time, because I struggled with it when I was writing it, when I was trying to figure out. And what this means is and what history is to me is when we started writing things down. We started recording things. Prehistory is having written shit down. Right. Before we have anything. So consider a time before history. I kind of look at this as consider a time before we wrote anything down to show you how to yield. meaning you had to trust because you didn't know the right answer. The right answer wasn't written down. It wasn't expressed. There was no right answer. And when you deal with your mom, you're like, there's a right answer. The doctors told us this, 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 and this is the right answer, right? You have proof.
Oh my goodness. That's so funny that you say that because the doctors don't seem to have a right answer. That is, part of my frustration. So it's really interesting that this came up.
and they don't have a right answer. And so but then this is to show you how to you can't know if you're doing it. You can't know if you're doing the right thing. You can't know, because if you open a book, you can know you're doing the right thing. The next line, you can't prove if you're doing it. Well, if it's written down, you can prove that you're doing it. I'm doing the right thing. Look, it says to do this and I did this. But still, you can be doing it. You're using it right now. You're using Tao to help guide you. And the last couple words is, but for what? What are you using it for? Are you using Tao to prove that you're doing something right? Are you using Tao to prove that you have the right answer? Are you using Tao for all of these things? Or I know it's a struggle, but you're trying to do this, like relinquish control. Like when you look at your mom, like you see something very specific, but there's nothing to see there. There's just your mom. And all of the definitions you have about your mom and all of the responsibility you have for your mom, that's not really there. That's all just shit you picked up along the way.
Boy, I picked up a lot of shit along the way, Martin.
That's right. And that's why it's like, look, and there is nothing to see. Because when you look and when you focus harder and harder and start to strip away all the definitions, there's nothing there. She's just a beautiful being. She's not your mom, right? I know that label means something.
Right.
But that label can keep us from seeing the divinity in the people around us, especially when, we're the ones, right? We're the firstborn. We got to control shit. We got to make sure that things happen. We got to move things along. We got to make sure we protect everybody. But all of that is picked up. All of that is picked up along the way. We think that that's our job. It's not our job. It's not the work that we've been put here to do. We've been put here to sort that work within ourselves, not impress upon others how important we are or how responsible we are or control the lives of others. And yes, if something happens to your mom, you may have more work to do in yourself. But to love your mom as who she is rather than just your mom. And now that means you're responsible because she was responsible for you because no one else is going to be responsible for her. And it's like, that's a lot. And that's why when, it's interesting. If you ever have pain in your body and you focus on that pain, the pain changes. When you focus on the pain changes because it gets smaller and it gets more precise. Rather than, and that's the idea of the subtle. Can you actually feel this? It's like, my knee hurts. Well, it's just the right side of my knee. And actually, it's just in the back a little bit. So it's not really my knee at all. It's this tendon. And you're like, now I'm attached to the subtle, right? Now it's like, and then when I look at my mom, it's like, she's my mom. And then she's like, no, she's just an aging woman that, is going through something right now. And it's like, I can love that, right? You can't prove it. You can't prove that you love your mom, but you can love her. And same thing with the kids that you work with. You can't know if you're making a difference. Maybe you can give them a test and prove you're making a difference, but you can't really prove you're making a difference because that's going to happen over time. But you can still be making that difference. And that's, again, that's that consider a time before history, before we wrote it down, before we figured out what was right and what was wrong.
I love that you always give me new insights and new ways to look at things, Martin.
Well, I'm grateful to be able to do that.
Well, I'm the one.
You know, like you.
Truly
Go on.
Grateful. No, I was just going to say it's truly grateful because learning.
Nope, you just dropped off. I had no idea your time was up. Just come back up if we can wrap this up real quick. And I know you probably have places to be. You got children waiting for you. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Actually, the kiddo.
Okay.
Yet I'm actually at school. I have a tendency to get here early, and so just so I can be prepared for my day, even though you can never really be prepared because you know what life is at you. So as I might, but I liked what you were saying about the pain thing, and I just have to tell you a silly story just because I'm so. And the other day I impaled my hand with a pencil, not on purpose. It was something that happened, right? Like I'm looking at this pencil sticking out of my hand and I'm like, what? Why? Right? So I flung the pencil across the room because that was my best way to dislodge it from my hand. But I say this because you're talking about the pain thing, and there was pain, but it was when I pressed down on it, and it led me to find that there was still a piece of graphite in my hand. And but it was cool because I soaked it and it didn't come out and it was still bothering me. And then I soaked it again. And then guess what? Last night I was able to get the tweezers and get it out. And so the pain is not what it was before. So I thought it was interesting, that whole tie-in with pain. It just made me think about impaling my hand and that it's not painful anymore. I got a little boo-boo there, but it's okay,
Can I ask which hand?
It's my left hand.
Your left hand. Okay, your left hand is the feminine, right? That's the and I know it was something that physically happened, but everything is energetic, right? So the left hand is the feminine side, and that is the side that that requires yielding, right? It's the side. It's not the side of action. And so you're going to want to look at yielding and paying attention to, because what you did with your hand was give it time, give it space, and it gave you the opportunity to heal. And you're going to want to look at areas in your life where else can I give time and space to give the opportunity to heal?
Well, is that analogous with mom giving her the time and space to heal?
That's kind of what I'm everything, this is what Tao talks about. Everything is an opportunity. When you look at things that you do, especially things you do to yourself and things that happen to you and things that you experience, when you take those and what if that was a lesson? And if you just kind of just out of curiosity, just ask, well, what if that was a lesson? What is this telling me? And it's nice energetically to understand that the left side is feminine, the right side is masculine, whereas the right side is action, the left side is yielding. And so, knowing that is nice. And then listening to how you solved the problem with patience and allowing it, you let it soak. You didn't do anything. You just let it be. And maybe you pawed at it a little bit and you thought about it a little bit. But it's really, you were shown how to deal with something. Now, if you take that lesson and apply it somewhere else, you might get the same results.
Well, once again, you always give me things to consider, Martin. So I'm glad for a chance to challenge my brain and to try to be open to considering things in different ways. And I love that
Yeah.
about you. So thank you again for helping me to challenge my mind and try to see things differently.
Yeah. And it's simply curiosity. That's it. Just curiosity. And I'm glad that I could. And who knows the reason that you decided to share the silly story. Because
I
all
like
of it is
being
inspired.
silly.
All of it is inspired. It's not just random. Like when people say, "Oh, I said something, but it's just a joke." It's like, is it?
So Dow would say that there was a reason that I shared that story and it was related to our conversation.
Right. So like Dow would say everything is inspired. So you hurt your hand. That was inspired. You healed your hand. That was inspired. You told the story. That was inspired. You specifically told the story to me in a way that I was able to see, and I was inspired to say what I did. Now, does that mean that I'm right? No. It just means that I was inspired to say that. You were inspired to say what you said. Now, what you do with it, that's going to be inspired too. Whether you forget it or put it into practice or anything. It doesn't really matter. We do what we do. I mentioned what I mentioned. You will hear it the way you need to hear it. And then we go along like in peace and in bliss, just sort of like, this is just something for me to consider.
Well, I like considering, like I said, new things. So again, I'm going to thank you and I'm going to try to get ready for my day, but I always appreciate talking to you. And I hope you have a wonderful day, Martin. Thanks again.
I will. Thank you. My best to your mom and your class and everybody. And I wish you the best. So, before Melissa joined, I went to the random number generator and I picked number 20. Stop learning. I hope you all enjoyed Melissa and my conversation. It's always nice to have a guest. So if you want to pick a number, I invite you to come up and do so. What I did with Melissa is very standard. I will create a baseline, ask some questions about what's going on in your life. Melissa and I have talked a couple times before, so I know about what's going on in her life. And then I'll ask you to pick a number. And you may have a number in your mind. I know my buddy Mary, she'll come up with a number in her mind and she'll start talking about something and then we'll read the number. So you don't necessarily have to pick the number after, because just like I was talking to Melissa about, it's all inspired. So if you pick a number and then we talk about something and create a baseline, that number is affected by that baseline anyway, because it's all inspired. It's like time doesn't exist, right? Like we have all these clocks everywhere, and yet we don't. Science still can't figure time out. So it's an interesting concept. But the title of number 20, which I picked on the random number generator today, was "Stop Learning." I was talking to someone about this yesterday. It's like, look, stop trying to fill in your time with learning. It's not helping you. Stop your learning. It has not been helpful. There is no difference between yes or no, nor between good and evil. Most people would never know that. They define the manifestations as others have, and foolishly give up themselves in favor of that. Everyone else wants to be excited. I prefer the darkness. I prefer to not care. Like a fool, I have no direction. Everyone else has abundance, while I seem to have lost it all. Within me there is no striving. It appears I am in chaos. Ordinary men look bright and intelligent, while I alone seem dull and confused, aimless as if on the sea, drifting with nowhere to rest. I don't aspire to be like others. I am nourished by Tao. You know, the title Stop Learning is literally stop learning. Stop figuring shit out. Stop doing that, because when you stop learning, you allow yourself to observe. You allow yourself to be curious. You allow yourself to consider different things. You know, I maybe this should be phrased, stop being taught. Because we learn everywhere, right? But stop being taught, maybe. Stop thinking. Stop processing things in your mind completely and only. You know, like, even when talking to Melissa, we can look at, like, her desire for her mom to be nearby is in her mind because it's safer. But she loves her mom, and she wants her mom to be independent and all of these things. And in doing that, you have to think with your heart. You have to open up and you have to say, I love her, and I don't want to hold her back. I don't want to hold her down. Yes, I mean, if she's not thinking clearly, like, right, if her mom is, like, you know, has Alzheimer's or something, does not know how to process things. But if she has her mind and she knows what she wants, and you abide, you let them do what they want. You don't try and stop them. You don't try to manipulate them into stopping. You don't get mad at them. You don't punish them for wanting what they want. And that's about not knowing the answer. When you don't know the answer, it's so much easier for you to question the answers that you're being told. Learning things hasn't been helpful. That's what it says in the beginning. Stop your learning. It has not been helpful. All the things that you've learned hasn't really helped you get, anything. It's the observations, the things that you've picked up. It's the things that you've been open to. I talk about learning and being taught differently. And in this verse, learning sort of means going out to be taught rather than just observing. Although learning, when we learn something, I don't like the idea of learning something and thinking that that's the truth. Right? When you learn something, you can still learn something else that will bring new information into the fold. Cece's going to join me. It's like the difference between being taught and learning. Is Cece going to join me? Oh, no, she jumped off. Okay. So there is, and then it continues, there is no difference between yes and no, nor between good and bad. The next line is really interesting. Most people would never know that. Most people would never know there's no difference between yes and no and good and evil. And most of you are like, well, of course there's a difference between good and evil. This is good, this is evil. This is right, this is wrong. This is yes, this is no. There is no difference between those things. Most people would never know that. They define the manifestation as others have. Right? They define the manifestation as others have. Others have said this is a yes and this is a no, this is a good, this is an evil, this is a right, this is a wrong. And so we, individuals, pick up all of those and just start defining them the way others have. This is why I talk about the idea of us living under the influence of our parents and then the education system and the economic system and all of these things, because we start defining the world as others have. We start defining the manifestation as others have. We don't look at it, like I was talking to Melissa about, we don't look at the manifestation as a lesson. We look at it as a measurement. We measure it as right, wrong, good, evil, up, down, all of these things. However, what the manifestation is for each and every one of us is a subjective lesson, a subjective understanding of what truth is. And if we can take that subjective understanding, like the pencil issue with Melissa, right? If she can take that as the lesson it is and process it, then she's learning, but she's learning about herself, not learning about the manifestation. The next line is, as they define the manifestation as others have, they foolishly give up themselves in favor of that. They give up their own understanding of life in favor of that. I was talking to someone yesterday about my dark retreat, and they were like, that must be torture. Well, it is torture if you learned about the manifestation through others. Because now you need entertainment, now you need all of these things, now you need, to be right, you need other people, you need all of this stuff to fill your life with so that you're not left alone in your own mind. Yes, it could be torture. However, as it says next, everyone else wants to be excited, right? They elected to define the world as others have, and others have defined it as exciting. Why? Because that's the most obvious way to describe the world. Who's going to give you more attention? Someone that says, no, life is boring and steady, and I just live it, and it's good. And other people say, no, life is exciting. I throw axes and zip line through forests, and I do all of this stuff. And it's like, well, yeah, but eventually you got to stop doing that, right? Eventually you got to chill the fuck out. Eventually you got to be quiet. Well, they don't know how to do that because they defined the world, they defined their surroundings as others have. They defined it as it must be exciting, it must be productive, it must be, wealthy, it must be all these things. And then it goes into this very solemn, I prefer the darkness. I prefer to not care. Like a fool, I have no direction. What does it look like from the outside? Like, yeah, my life, like you guys may be looking at me saying, oh my God, like you have all of this great insight. But I'm telling you, like my life is boring. Like I've been working on a mosaic recently. I've been like, I'll sit and look out the window. Like I don't have, but these insights are about being attached to the subtle. I love my life completely, but it's not going to be filled with like cake and restaurants and shows and parties and all of these things, like all of the time. Like, sure, I'm going to go to the opera in a couple weeks and I'm going to go do some things. And I do stuff. That is part of my life. But the darkness, I prefer the darkness. I prefer to be still and be quiet. Like I'll go to the opera and then I'll go home and I won't want to engage in music and performance for quite some time after that, because that'll be enough for a while. I prefer to not care. I don't have to be right. I don't have to be on the top of any pile. Either way, I'm good where I'm at, wherever that is. Like a fool, I have no direction. Everyone talks about, you got to have a goal. You got to have this. You got to have that. And it's like, no, I'm good. I'm good to have no direction. I'm good to allow myself to be guided by the universe, be guided by Tao or God or whatever. Everyone else has abundance while I seem to have lost it all. This is the thing. I have everything that I need and I know it. And I'm grateful for it. And everyone else is talking about abundance and they want to talk about numbers and all of these things. And I'm like, I'm good with everything that I have. And do I have as much as everybody else? I don't know. I never checked their bank accounts. I've never checked their shit. But I'm good. I have food. I have shelter. I have love. I'm good. Within me, there is still no striving. It appears I am in chaos. A lot of people out there in the world of social media and the world of the internet and stuff want to tell you that, like, you need to have, you need to move towards a direction, you get a goal, and maybe that's good for you, and I don't want to put that down, but within me, there is no striving. And that's something that's really I don't want to strive. I don't want to hustle, especially now where everything is just a sham. Everything is just done by by AI, and everything is, everything is just a roll of the dice, whether it's real or not. It's like everything around us is even more fake than ever. And so the best thing to do is just be with yourself. Be still in your body. It's the only thing that you know is true. Ordinary men look bright and intelligent, while I alone seem dull and confused. You didn't watch the debates. You didn't do this. You didn't do that. You didn't like rah, 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 rah. Like you must not know anything. It's just like, yeah, maybe I don't know anything that I don't need to know. I remember someone once told me, "Did you read this book like this person?" I was just like, "No, but if they're talking truth, I know what they're saying because I'm attached to truth." And I find truth through my subjective experience, which is that subjective experience isn't true. I mean, it's true for me, but it isn't truth. But it will guide me to truth. That's how we understand things in the universe, because we all have these subjective experiences. And when we can be subtle, when we can be attached to the subtle, when we can allow ourselves the space to just allow it all to be, we're not confused, although it may look that way from the outside. And when it says here, aimless as if on the sea, drifting with nowhere to rest, that's just what it appears. It's not actually what's happening, because I'm resting wherever I am. I don't aspire to be like others. I am nourished by Tao. If we take that, I don't aspire to be like others, and move it to the beginning and recognize that most people would never know that there's no difference between good and evil, because they define the manifestation as others have. And at the end, it says, I don't aspire to be like others. I don't aspire to define the manifestation as others have. I don't aspire to label things good and evil, right and wrong, up and down, left and right. They just are. And because they are, I am free to be. Thank you guys so much for joining me for this Tao of the Day. That was number 20. Melissa joined me for number 14 earlier. I love you guys. Thank you so much once again. If you're interested in learning more about the Tao Te Ching or picking up a copy, you can do so at my website, which you can find in the links in my profile. Other than that, I hope you all have a wonderful day. We'll see you tomorrow. And until next time, keep recovering yourself.